and by you, the people.
Live from our nation's capital, it's Deadline DC with Brad Bennett.
Welcome to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I'm Brad Bannon because no one else would take the job. I'm a national Democratic and progressive strategist, a political analyst for News Radio KNX in Los Angeles, and a columnist for The Hill in Washington, D.C. To get my take on Donald Trump's imperial presidency, you can read my columns in The Hill at muckrack.com/Brad Bannon. Mondays on Deadline DC, I talk to the people and players behind the politics and policies that drive our great nation forward, or at least keep it from going backwards during Trump 2.0. Today, we have a really great show for you. In the first half hour, our guest is John Bennett, who is the White House correspondent and an editor-at-large at Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call. Then in the second half hour, our guest will be Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is an immigration attorney and activist. Before we bring on our first guest, John Bennett, we're going to watch this clip about Donald Trump commenting on his relationship with the late Jeffrey Epstein.
Would have had something that would have used it.
And people keep writing stories about the time he threw him out of Mar-a-Lago. Can you settle that? What was it about? What caused the breach to begin?
That's such old history. Very easy to explain, but I don't want to waste your time by explaining it. But for years, I wouldn't talk to Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't talk because he did something that was inappropriate. He hired help. And I said, don't ever do that again. He stole people that worked for me. I said, don't ever do that again. He did it again. And I threw him out of the place, persona non grata. I threw him out, and that was it. I'm glad I did, if you want to know the truth. And by the way, I never went to the island. I never had the privilege of going to his island. And I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island. In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island.
That, of course, was Donald Trump trying to explain for the 18th time his relationship with the late sex scandal trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. There are two things about that. First of all, he says he disavowed Epstein because he stole an employee from him. It seems to me there are a lot better reasons than that, than disavowing Epstein if he really did. And second of all, he said never had the privilege, and I underline the word privilege, of visiting Epstein Island. Anyway, our guest in this half hour, as promised, is John Bennett, who is the White House correspondent and an editor-at-large at Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call. John, I've been checking in the national polls I've seen recently. Only 20% of the public, including many only 20% of the public approves of Trump's handling of the Epstein scandals, and I suspect that clip gives us explains why his ratings are so low. What's your take?
Yeah, this has been an extraordinarily rough few weeks for President Trump. And, they were on a roll. You didn't have to agree with the policies. You didn't have to like the legislation. You didn't have to like the tariffs or the trade deals. You didn't have to love some of the foreign policy moves. But from his perspective, he was getting his agenda passed through Congress. The Senate, though slowly, was churning more nominees, and he had a number of trade deals announced. And then, seemingly for no reason, and no one has explained this, or reported it out, Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche over at the Department of Justice decided to announce that they were not going to release any of the documents related to the Jeffrey Epstein scandal and cases. And that is that was the exact opposite of what candidate Trump and even at times candidate Vance and others promised voters, Republican voters during and independent voters during the 2024 campaign. So what you have is you have a base problem for really the first time for Trump, even though we're going to need to see another round of polling to see if this really is causing the base to quote unquote walk away. I'm among the class who have said there's nothing that could make the base walk away in meaningful numbers from Donald Trump. So we'll see, as the president himself would say, we'll see what happens. The first round of polling that was taken last week, as this was all starting to seep into public, showed that the base on issues, on policy issues like immigration and the economy, the base was still there, even though they're frustrated with Trump about these not releasing these Epstein documents. And yeah, I mean, using the phrasing, I didn't have the privilege. I never had the privilege of going to Epstein Island. I mean, I heard that, and I was walking past my television set when Trump said that from Scotland today, and I did a quadruple take. I just couldn't believe, and I'm one who has spent the last 10 years hanging on Donald Trump's every word. They pay me to, so the listeners don't have to. And I was shocked. So he got me this morning with that with that use of privilege, based on what we know through several trials and many investigations into this. So we'll see. I'm not convinced that the base walks away. They are frustrated, and it's not just about his Trump in the documents. I think the media plays a role in skewing this and not explaining, focusing on his Trump in the documents, is Trump not in the documents, did Trump go to the island, did Bill Clinton go to the island? This is about conservative voters, conservative Americans, and others who are sick and tired of at least the perception that the rich and powerful, the rich and famous, just are out here doing whatever they want, breaking all kind of laws, doing all kind of lewd and indecent things, and getting away with it because they're rich and famous. I don't get the sense from Republican voters that they care if 10 Republican senators and 3 governors are swept up in this, as long as all of the elites who were involved in this are exposed. And that's a problem for Trump, because this isn't necessarily just about, they're not just out to get the big bad Democrats this time. They want to know every name on that list, and this is not going away.
Seems to me, and I appreciate your opinion, it seems to me that Trump is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't here. If he releases the list and his name does appear prominently, he's going to run into problems with that. Now, it seems to me also, by not releasing the list and continued these tortured explanations of this whole affair, which change daily, it seems to me, he's letting the public imagine the worst about his relationship with Epstein.
That's right. I mean, again, he denied today, yet again, that he went to the island, but that's not enough until the people see the documents. And even then, you have to wonder, a week into this, a week or so into this, it feels like a month. I think it's been a week.
Yeah, it does.
That even if the folks saw some of the documents, and we know how this works. There will be documents that cannot be released. There will be an effort by the administration and by federal judges to protect the victims, even if the victims, it's been 15 years or 10 years or whatever since these awful things happened to these women who were minors at the time. They're grown women now. They're above 21, but judges in the administration are still going to try to protect them and hide their names. So there could be documents that just can't be released, or they're fully redacted when they are released. And that's going to cause a lot of frustration and anger among the voters and the Americans that we're talking about. And it's just a fact that Republican voters have become susceptible to conspiracy theories and conspiratorial thinking. So when you get 3 pages that are redacted to protect a victim, their minds are immediately going to go to, what are they hiding? The elites are doing it again.
Yep. John, we're going to take a little break here to give our radio listeners a little vacation, but we're going to continue with this interview with John Bennett from Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call for our viewers on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, which I guess is X now. We'll be back with more of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. More with John Bennett from Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call, and more discussion about the Epstein sex scandal. We'll be right back after these messages.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them?
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. My guest in this half hour is John Bennett, who is the White House correspondent and an editor at large at Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call. John, let me ask you this. You know, as a Democrat, I'm not averse to hearing bad news about Donald Trump, but I find the coverage or just the existence of this Epstein scandal very depressing. You know, I feel we're at the end of the Roman Empire before the emperors and dictators take over. It's such tawdry affair. I just find the discussion of it depressing. Do you think Americans do too?
Yeah, I think they would have to. I remember covering every day, every moment, every minute of the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings for his Supreme Court seat, and his accuser, Christine Blasey Ford. And no matter what you thought of either of those people, I think it wrapped up on a Friday, and by the end of that, I could barely speak. Just watching these two people be gutted on live television for 3 or 4 days and asked all kinds of personal questions, and all these awful details, allegations came out. And the same thing here. We're kind of reliving, and I'm sure the victims are having to relive what they went through. And to hear, repeated mentions of underage girls, and now interviewing Maxwell, Epstein's longtime partner, and hearing, the allegations which he was convicted of, including like scouting these young girls and luring them to his house, and sometimes participating in sexual abuse on minors. It is very depressing stuff. You don't close your laptop at the end of a workday and feel good about anything after you've been reporting on this and following every twist and turn. And especially now that Miss Maxwell has been, for some reason, brought back into this by the administration. It doesn't, as a political reporter, you're trying to, okay, you're trying to determine this is the political play here. This is what they're trying to do. Well, you've got a base that is upset with elites, allegedly, and folks have been convicted of doing awful things with underage minors. And then you're going to talk to someone and base your effort and roll the dice on someone who's been convicted of the same awful things. And this is a White House that has repeatedly, as they're talking about the undocumented immigrants that they've deported or that they've detained for deportation, they have played up the ones who have been charged or alleged to have done the same kinds of things with underage minors and underage girls. So why they would maybe seek a deal with Miss Maxwell? One conclusion a lot of people are coming to is that they're looking for some kind of deal for her silence, because she
I
has
suspect so.
firsthand.
John, we gotta we
Trump.
gotta stop here to bring back our radio audience. Our guest in this half hour is John Bennett from Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call. We'll be back with more of Deadline DC and our radio listeners right after this very quick break. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is John Bennett, who is the White House correspondent and an editor at large at Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call. We're going to turn the page now and talk about foreign policy. After spending the first 20 minutes of the half hour talking about soiled linen, it'd be a refreshing change. John, yesterday, Donald Trump, who seems to growing frustrated, increasingly frustrated with his failure of ending the war in Ukraine after telling voters he could bring peace to the region in 24 hours, and we're working on 6 months now, said that he may have to turn up the sanctions on Russia and his good buddy Vladimir Putin. And then today, he disagreed publicly with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said the other day that there was no starvation in Gaza. Trump said today there is a starvation in Gaza, and that the United States is going to intensify efforts to ship food to the beleaguered inhabitants of Gaza. What's your take on all this?
Well, the president certainly said a lot of words this morning during two, including one very lengthy meeting that included the press. We call it a pool spray with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The latter pool spray inside his golf club in Turnberry, Scotland. And there, I just gave the president what he wanted, a little plug for his golf club. It's funny how that works. I didn't even know I was doing it until I did it. So he spoke for over an hour, took reporters' questions for over an hour on a range of issues. At one moment, we're talking about Gaza. The next moment, we're talking about pharmaceutical tariffs. And I zoned out while writing a story about interest rates. And I tuned back in, and Trump was talking about the height of the ceiling in the building they were sitting in at Turnberry. So a very kind of bizarre pool spray this morning. But the president said he broke with Netanyahu a little. He said, the folks in Gaza look pretty hungry. Interesting that he said, based on what he had seen on television, and maybe another president would have cited his intelligence briefing, but I'm not sure Trump is getting those every day. Haven't received a straight answer on that one. Looks like about once or twice a week he's getting an intel briefing. So, he said they look hungry. He said he disagreed with Netanyahu, saying there was no starvation, but he didn't go as far as Starmer, Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron have gotten more and more involved in this situation in Gaza. Starmer said it's wholly intolerable and it's a humanitarian catastrophe. Trump just said the folks looked hungry. Trump did say, however, that he wanted to set up food centers. And then he said it would be very easy to do, and that's just not reality. You have to secure the trucks. You have to secure the warehouse when you bring it in to store it. You have to vet the food. Then you have to move it into Gaza. Then you have to who's gonna distribute it? Is it going to be NGOs? Is it going to be State Department officials? USAID they were the experts in this, and those folks are tending bar and
Do we still have a USAID?
No, they're gone. So
No.
who's going to do this, and how are you going to secure them, and who's going to secure them? And then if you get in there, what's going to happen if you're using more American personnel and hungry Gazans understandably rush toward the food center, and Israeli troops it's unclear if they're under orders or if maybe you don't have the best trained troops in certain situations, and they open fire, and you have more dead Gazans, and then you have more dead American humanitarian personnel. So this is extremely difficult. It's extremely hard to do. And Trump saying it's going to be easy, that's a clip and save moment. Check back in 2 weeks and see where they are on this, because I don't know if they need more money from Congress to do this, or if they have some cash laying around, because it's going to be very expensive too. On top of being very tactically difficult, it'll be very expensive.
Let's turn to another subject. Since you're writing a story on interest rates, a couple of weeks ago, the president was meeting with a bunch of very conservative Republican members of Congress and said he was going to fire the chairman of the Fed, Jerome Powell. He turned around the next day and sort of said no. Then last week, they had a very awkward tour of the Fed together. What's the story with Jerome Powell and the president?
Jerome Powell is still the Federal Reserve Chairman. And, I think if Trump was going to fire him, maybe he already would. But then again, the Fed board meets on Wednesday, and at some point this week, we should get an announcement on whether the Fed will touch interest rates, be it lower them, be it I don't think they're going to raise them, or leave them as is. All indications are as is the leader in the clubhouse right now. Trump wants them lower. Trump went to the Federal Reserve last week to visit a construction site. They're renovating some of the older buildings at the Fed here in Washington. And Trump has picked out the cost overruns, about 2.5, I believe, roughly 2.5, 2.7 billion in overruns. And so he's used that to try to pressure Powell, who looks unimpressed and unintimidated, to say the least. Trump said as he was leaving the Federal Reserve construction site that there was no pressure on Powell to lower rates. About an hour after Trump took the 2-minute drive back to the White House, he sent 3 top officials out to the driveway to talk to reporters. And Budget Chief Russ Vought took all of about 50 words to begin pressuring Powell again to lower rates. And they've kept it up since then. Even Trump this morning was asked about this and about Powell lowering rates. And the first thing Trump said was, well, I think he should lower rates, and went into his spiel. And they've turned this now into an argument about housing costs and folks not being able to buy a home, and blaming Powell for it, saying interest rates are too high, people just can't afford it. So we'll see what the Fed does. So far, Powell hasn't appeared moved very much, and the Fed board hasn't appeared moved very much by Trump's pressure campaign. But, he said Trump saying that there was no pressure, not exactly the case.
Okay. I want to thank our guest in this half hour, John Bennett, who is the White House correspondent and editor at large at Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call. I also want to do something I forgot, which is to welcome back our radio listeners. If our radio listeners want to watch us as well as listen to us, you can watch us at twitter.com/Brad Bannon, at facebook.com/Deadline DC with Brad Bannon /videos, and on YouTube at youtube.com/Deadline DC. We'll be right back with more of Deadline DC after this very quick break.
The Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council present the story of Tom and Levi.
Tom is the smartest man I know. He's been a professor at 2 major universities, been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, he told me that he was having problems in his classes. I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. And he was telling them that he was doing it as a favor to them, but I think in reality, he just wanted to get out of there. I was really starting to worry because I saw something was wrong.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me, and my love for him was just immense.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
What grows in the forest? Trees? Sure. Know what else grows in the forest? Our imagination, our sense of wonder, and our family bonds grow too. Because when we disconnect from this and connect with this, we reconnect with each other and build family memories we will carry with us forever. The forest is closer than you think. Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. It's easy. Just put in your zip code to find family-friendly outdoor destinations near you. You'll also find guides to free activities, games, and amazing forest facts. Give the magic of the outdoors to your kids and reconnect with your family. Find a forest near you at discovertheforest.org. That's discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WACK, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code WACK, Medicare for All is back in the spotlight. With new bills recently introduced in Congress, what makes these proposals different from earlier versions? And why are some advocates feeling hopeful even in the current political climate? What would a truly public universal healthcare system look like? And how could it help curb the soaring costs, corporate greed, and bureaucracy plaguing our current system? To unpack this, we spoke with Rachel Madley, Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Center for Health and Democracy, a former health policy advisor to Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, lead sponsor of the House Medicare for All bill. Rachel helped shape and reintroduce the landmark legislation in 2023.
Investors on Wall Street see health insurance companies as an investment opportunity to build their wealth. We have to make healthcare a bad investment opportunity. No one should be making money on our healthcare. And when we get sick, when people are at their most vulnerable and they need care, that should not be a piggy bank for Wall Street investors. It should be patient focused and just focused on getting that person healthy and back to work, back to their loved ones, regardless of ability to pay, and not leaving them with medical debt. So I think that's one of the biggest strengths of the bill.
Get the full Code WACK story on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WACK wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bennett. My guest in this half hour is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is an immigration attorney and activist. She's here to discuss her experiences with the hardships of immigrant families. Before we get to Kate, though, we're going to run this clip about families separated by ICE during the Trump crackdown on immigrants.
Dad, puppy is fine. Daddy's fine.
What happens to the children when a parent gets taken by ICE?
We'll explain.
No!
For the parent, it could be months inside of a detention center or being deported back to their home country. And for the children, uncertainty, wondering if their parents will ever come home.
What's wrong, puppy?
Across Massachusetts, thousands of immigrants, many with no criminal record, have been detained by immigration authorities. In May alone, federal immigration officials arrested more than 1,400 people in Massachusetts, more than any other month on record. A considerable number of those arrested are parents. Left behind are their children, some too young to understand what has happened. We recently followed two families with children whose parents were taken by ICE. The absence of a parent leads to severe financial stress and a mental toll that can be devastating for the children. With President Trump's recently signed budget bill that includes more spending on immigration enforcement, experts say this could lead to more ICE arrests, leaving more children without their parents.
That is from a Boston Globe story talking about two immigrant families who have been torn apart by Donald Trump's draconian deportation policies. Our guest in this half hour is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is an immigration attorney and activist. Kate, welcome to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon.
Brad, happy to be here with you. Thanks for having me on.
First, tell me, does the story in the Boston Globe today about the immigrant families and the hardships on them, does that reflect your experiences with immigrants?
Absolutely. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I've been doing this work for about 20 years. I've represented a lot of families, and as of late, I mean, since the second administration, they are targeting families. The vast majority of people getting picked up are not criminals. They're being picked up at court appointments, at ICE check-ins. They are people who have families here. They have children at home. I have clients whose kids are in foster care because of their detentions. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to see what happens to these families and these kids as a result of these policies. I mean, up close and personal, it is some of the most horrific stuff I've seen in 20 years of this work.
Well, tell us, you're on a bus tour right now, which is why your screen is moving back and forth. Tell us about the bus tour.
I am. So I have a converted school bus, a schoolie they call it, and it's a passion project, a community engagement project of my law firm. It's called El Bus Sin Fronteras, which means the bus without borders. And we renovated this bus to go mobile into immigrant communities where they are, because so often now it's hard for people to access good legal services. So we're on a big tour right now. As I'm talking to you, I'm driving into Denver, Colorado, where tomorrow I'll be hosting an event at the Mexican consulate there. And then we'll be heading into more rural parts of the Midwest after that.
Okay. I'd like to, why don't you, in the spirit of the clip Boston Globe video we just saw, why don't you talk about some of the personal stories behind the immigrants that you've been working with?
Well, I just got notification about a client of mine, a young girl named Wendy. She's 19, and on Friday she had a bond hearing. Wendy is from Cuba. She and her mom and her dad and her 9-year-old brother came to the United States a couple of years ago. They were politically active in Cuba and they had been targeted, so they came here seeking asylum. And on a month ago, on Wendy's 19th birthday, they went to their ICE check-in appointment. They were all dressed up and they were thinking they were going to go out to dinner to celebrate Wendy's birthday after the check-in, and instead they were all detained and separated. Wendy was put in an adult detention center because she was 19, and her mom, dad, and her little brother were taken to a family detention center. They were released, and Wendy had her bond hearing on Friday, and it was denied. And Wendy is a remarkable young woman. She is pre-med in college with a 3.8 GPA and a scholarship. She graduated from high school with a 4.0. Nobody in this family has a criminal history. And despite all of that, she is separated from her family and detained. So that's just one story of many that I could tell you.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, because that's an interesting story. You know, you hear about people like her who's studying to be a doctor or training as scientists at university somewhere across the United States, and we're kicking these people out. And I wonder if anybody's in the Trump administration is thinking about the contributions people like your client could make to the nation in the future. It just seems so terribly short-sighted to me.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. And I think, I don't know, my sense of it is that they don't think through these things. I mean, they made a statement about they're going to continue the farm raids and deport all of the agricultural workers, and then all the people who are on Medicaid, many of whom are employed, of course, can go and take the farm job. I mean, the thinking is that short-sighted that, oh, we'll just fill the positions that immigrants might have taken with Americans who aren't working. And I think, frankly, there's just a lot of racism under these policies, and really a belief that people like this, like immigrants from other countries, particularly people with brown skin, don't have a lot to contribute. I think that is their belief. And so they don't, I have a lot of these conversations with people. I go on conservative talk shows and I go into the lion's den to try and have conversations with people. And I don't get the sense that there is an understanding or an appreciation of the contribution of immigrants, other than that some of them recognize that immigrants will do dirty work that a lot of Americans won't do, which is in many cases true. But to your point, I mean, there is in all sectors and very high skilled immigrants that are needed, entrepreneurs, tech, engineering, medical, all of that. The contributions are everywhere, of course.
When I read these horror stories about the treatment of immigrants, it's not the same, but my grandfather, Jim Bannon, was the first Bannon born in the United States. His parents were Irish immigrants. And when I was young, my grandfather used to tell me stories about when he first tried to find jobs as a young man, and we're talking about in Rhode Island here, not Texas or anything. He used to run into signs at stores and factories saying "No Irish need apply," and that left an indelible feeling with me about devaluing immigrants just because they practice a different religion or they're a different race. And it just seems to me that, why do you think? Well, let me ask you this question. In recent national polls, there's been a significant decline in Trump's ratings dealing with immigration. Do you think these horror stories and stories like the ones you tell have had an impact on American public opinion?
I do think that. And I know that we saw that in the first Trump administration in the summer of 2018. It was another summer. And during that period of time, Trump had implemented the zero tolerance policy at the border and had decided to prosecute all of the parents who were coming over with their children. And they started to take the children away from their parents at the border. And I was working up close and personal that summer with many moms who had had their children taken from them. And there was a national outcry there because people can see themselves in families. Everybody's a parent or a child. And so when we start to see the families get torn apart, I think that's when people start to be able to put themselves in the shoes of these people, and then they start to fight against the policy. And I think that that's the turning point, is when we start going after the families and the children, and the stories are told that the American public won't stand for it anymore. And so I'm hopeful that there's enough of an outcry this summer, like there was in 2018, that we start to see a shift in some of these really horrific and brutal policies.
The Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council present the story of Tom and Levi.
Tom is the smartest man I know. He's been a professor at 2 major universities, been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, he told me that he was having problems in his classes. I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. And he was telling them that he was doing it as a favor to them, but I think in reality, he just wanted to get out of there. I was really starting to worry because I saw something was wrong.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me, and my love for him was just immense.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
What grows in the forest? Trees? Sure. Know what else grows in the forest? Our imagination, our sense of wonder, and our family bonds grow too. Because when we disconnect from this and connect with this, we reconnect with each other and build family memories we will carry with us forever. The forest is closer than you think. Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. It's easy. Just put in your zip code to find family-friendly outdoor destinations near you. You'll also find guides to free activities, games, and amazing forest facts. Give the magic of the outdoors to your kids and reconnect with your family. Find a forest near you at discovertheforest.org. That's discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WACK, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code WACK, Medicare for All is back in the spotlight. With new bills recently introduced in Congress, what makes these proposals different from earlier versions? And why are some advocates feeling hopeful even in the current political climate? What would a truly public universal healthcare system look like? And how could it help curb the soaring costs, corporate greed, and bureaucracy plaguing our current system? To unpack this, we spoke with Rachel Madley, Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Center for Health and Democracy, a former health policy advisor to Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, lead sponsor of the House Medicare for All bill. Rachel helped shape and reintroduce the landmark legislation in 2023.
Investors on Wall Street see health insurance companies as an investment opportunity to build their wealth. We have to make healthcare a bad investment opportunity. No one should be making money on our healthcare. And when we get sick, when people are at their most vulnerable and they need care, that should not be a piggy bank for Wall Street investors. It should be patient focused and just focused on getting that person healthy and back to work, back to their loved ones, regardless of ability to pay, and not leaving them with medical debt. So I think that's one of the biggest strengths of the bill.
Get the full Code WACK story on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WACK wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Sorry, we had a technical problem there, which our able executive producer, Mark Grimaldi, has fixed. My guest in this half hour is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is an immigration attorney and activist. Let me ask you this question, Kate. Why is there so much widespread hostility towards immigrants? And, is it just raw racism, or is there something more to it?
Well, I mean, before the break, you brought up the attacks on Irish immigrants. Back in the 1700s, 90% of the people immigrating to the United States were white, English-speaking Protestants. And so Catholics like the Irish or Germans were under attack, and they were talked about and depicted as invaders and rodents and ne'er-do-wells. And then, of course, during the 1800s, the Chinese population was attacked, Eastern Europeans, Italians, Jews. And when you look at the cartoons of those eras, the way that the people were talked about and depicted, it repeats a lot of what we see today. And so On the one hand, it's good to know that we've been here before and we'll make it out again. But to the point about why do we keep doing this as a nation? Why does this keep happening? I think that there is this base human nature that people have to make themselves feel better and slightly more important and to keep things the same as they are now. There's a fear of change. And so when a politician like Donald Trump comes on board and uses that base human nature to encourage those behaviors and thoughts in people and lies to them and tells them that all of these brown people who are coming from Venezuela and Cuba are eating pets and they're trafficking children and they're here to hurt everybody, and people believe that, it only just triggers sort of a natural instinct in them that existed already. And fear is a really, really powerful motivator. And so it gets people to come out and support Donald Trump and believe that this is right and good. And so there are so many people who see these horrific courthouse detentions and these ICE kidnappings on the street, and they still believe that this is the right thing because they think and they've been told that this is keeping them safe. And frankly, the voices on the other side have not been loud enough. I will say that. I mean, that is one criticism I have of the previous administration is Biden didn't talk enough about the positive aspects of immigration and the things that he were doing. He let the conversation be led by Donald Trump about immigrants being bad. And that has become the narrative for many millions of people in this country. And at this point, it's really hard to convince them otherwise, even with videos and photos and statistics and data and all of the things that you would normally employ to convince someone of what the truth is.
Have you had the opportunity to visit some of these, concentration camps for immigrants? There have been a lot of national stories on alligator Alcatraz in Florida and the conditions there. What are the conditions like in these camps? Okay.
Can you hear me
Okay.
now, Brad?
Yep. Yes, we
Sorry, I'm
can.
on the bus and we have Starlink, and when we go under a bridge, the internet goes
Oh, okay.
away. So
Oh,
sorry about that.
okay. What are the conditions like in these immigrant camps?
Oh, they're really bad. We have this capacity for about 41,000 people nationwide in our detention centers, but we're upwards over, I mean, at last count, which was over a month ago, we were more than 50% over capacity. And so the conditions are really, really bad because of overcrowding, just to start out with, but then also just the lack of consideration and care about the needs of people. There have been reports of people having to eat out of their plates with their hands shackled behind their back,
Yeah, I saw a
like,
story about that.
yeah, and women having to go to the bathroom in front of men, and people being left in vehicles overnight, hot or extreme weather, extreme heat, extreme cold, insects, infestations. I mean, all of that stuff, depending upon the facility. There are reports like that coming out. And then on top of that, there's a lot of mental health and abuse that goes on. A lot of the people who work in these jails, I mean, a lot of the people live in these rural communities and they don't have a lot of job options, and they're not bad people. I've met a lot of them over the years, but a lot of people who are drawn to work in these facilities do it because frankly, they get off on it. They like being able to abuse and mess with immigrants. And so they taunt them, they mistreat them, and the way that people are talked to and treated is as bad as the physical conditions that they suffer in these facilities. And it's really, really distressing. And historically, Congress has oversight over these facilities, but it's another thing that the Trump administration has cut back. And they've said, if a member of Congress wants to come and oversee a facility, they have to give us 72 hours notice. So there's no surprise oversight or auditing of these facilities anymore either.
Now, as we said before, you're in a bus. Where are you now?
So I'm outside of Denver, Colorado. We're going to be going to the Mexican consulate tomorrow and doing a presentation. And with the bus, we like to set up a, tent and hand out goodies and hand out know your rights cards and give immigration advice to people. And help them feel supported and appreciated and educated and informed in ways that isn't too oppressive or upsetting. Because right now there's a lot of know your rights stuff coming out, but sometimes it can be scary or not fun to go to one of these events. So part of the bus is to spread cheer and fun in immigrant communities, and not just bring, only the know your rights information, but also like some fun and celebration for what immigrants, the importance of immigrants in this country. Because really, we wouldn't, of course, we all know this, we would not be who we are if it weren't for the contributions of immigrants before and now.
Yeah, and it just seems, well, we've covered that. I just don't get it. Let me ask you a question. You've been an immigration attorney for a long time and activist. What got you into this work?
It was an experience in one of these detention centers. I was a law student. It was during the Bush administration, and I signed up for the immigration clinic at the law school. And my professor sent me to the first family detention center. And I was doing an intake with a family, a mom, a dad, and a little baby, and they were all in prison uniforms. The baby had this like navy blue little onesie that was issued to her by the prison, and they were from Iraq. And this was in about 2006 or 2007. And her mom asked me if I would take her baby out of this detention center and take care of her until they could get out, because it was so horrible for them in there. And I remember just being like, that was the moment for me, seeing the reality of how we were treating just asylum seekers, just people who were here for protection. And this is how we were treating them. And I couldn't believe it. And I knew that I wanted to fight for this forever for the rest of my career. And I wasn't able to take their baby with me that day, but I did, as a student attorney, get to take that case and win it and get them out of jail. And it was the most gratifying and impactful experience of my life. And I've never looked back. There's so much work to do. Of course, it's only harder now than it was then. And there's just so much work to do in the field of immigration and activism for all of us.
Well, let me ask you this final question. My daughter is a high school teacher, and there are a number of immigrants she teaches. And at the beginning of the school year, they were having weekly meetings about what to do if an ICE agent showed up at the school. Do immigrants who are approached by ICE have any rights? So we've just basically wiped all those out under Trump.
Well, it's very different now, 6 months in, than it was back then. That we were telling everybody about constitutional rights, and you don't have to answer a question. You don't have to identify yourself unless you're being arrested for probable cause, and you can negate a search, all of those things. But of course, what we're seeing is that the Trump administration is routinely violating people's constitutional rights. And so it doesn't really provide much help to tell someone what their rights are. The better thing to do is to tell people what to do, how to prepare. You need to have a plan. You need to know who's going to come get the kids if you get detained. You need to know where all of your important documents are. You need to have a lawyer on retainer. And then to the people who witness these unlawful arrests and these kidnappings, we all need to know how to be good witnesses, which means get out your phones, record the event, ask for badge number, write down how many agents are there, what cars are they driving, what are the plate numbers. You're not supposed to interfere with an action because that could get people hurt, but you can definitely record and become a really strong witness, because a lot of the times in times like these, the justice is coming later in the federal court system, not in the moments of the actual enforcement actions.
Kate, that's unfortunately all the time we have. Hope you can join us again sometime. This is Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I want to thank our guest, Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who's an immigration activist and attorney, and John Bennett, White House correspondent for Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call, and our intrepid executive producer, Mark Grimaldi.